like, yes. So once again, for those who just join us, welcome today to our today's event, How to Use Technology in Kids Education. Our today's presenter, Rishma. As I mentioned, she's a UX designer and she's an English language instructor. So she's going to be entertaining you today with a very interesting presentation and Q&A session. I'm here. I'm going to be serving as usual as a moderator, accessing your questions. My name is Sasha. I'm in charge of events and partnerships, Wagon Tokyo Coding Bootcamp. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are running a coding bootcamp in Tokyo, which we teach people how to build web applications from scratch during our web development bootcamps, and also how to use, analyze, manipulate data during our data science bootcamps. We do it on campus. Now we have a campus very close to Meguro Station, 10 minutes walk, in the place called Impact Tokyo. And we also do it remote for those who want to join us online. So without ado, I would like to give a microphone to our today's speaker. Rishma, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Sasha, for that wonderful introduction. I just wanted to shout out to Wagon. Thanks for having me. Thanks for setting up all of this today. I know we've been talking for quite some time. So, and thank you to everyone who is here and on time and excited to get started. So as Sasha mentioned, today I'm going to be talking about technology in the classroom. I wanted to make this as accessible to anyone. So if there are members of the audience who are teachers, this will be useful to you. If there are people who are web developers, programmers, UI and UX designers who are interested in building technology and edtech tools for schools in Tokyo, this is also very useful. And I've tried to include a bunch of different things in the presentation to make it, as fun and interactive as possible. So feel free to message in the chat if you have any questions. If something pops up and you want to stop me and ask, please do so. All right, let's get into it. So a little bit about me. As Sasha mentioned, I am an English teacher in Tokyo. I teach at a private high school, which makes my experience a little bit different to public school language instructors, in the sense that my school is very tech focused. We have a lot of technology with us in the classroom. Students have access to iPads, we have Apple TVs, we even have Peppa, the robot that some students use to code on and practice coding. And these things aren't rare, but it is special when you compare public schools and private schools. So I'm a language instructor. I worked in UX design and strategy for mobile app companies for many years before moving to Japan. I am from beautiful Trinidad and Tobago, putting this out there for when the world reopens, please come and visit my sunny Caribbean island. And I'm also the author and illustrator of the book Animal Adventure, which was originally a Flash player game. And when Flash died and is no longer with us, I turned it into a paperback publication. So before I jump into the EdTech side, I want to start by talking about my methodology for design. And I use design thinking as one of the processes, both in the classroom and in the design of lesson plans and activities. So design thinking is a human-centered iterative process that designers use to tackle problems. And this definition comes from the Interaction Design Foundation, and they have a fantastic website, which is chock full of case studies for anyone who is interested in knowing more about design thinking. So design thinking has its place in design, but also I found it really useful in education. And because of the way in which the process works, there's a lot of research that you get into, and then it moves into the conceptualization, prototyping phase, the design phase, and this all leads to innovation. So I found it helpful to look at the design thinking model when designing lesson plans for my students and incorporating technology into it. So lots of companies use design thinking. There's IBM, Apple, but my personal favorite, and the one I go back to time and time again, is Google. So On the Think with Google website, they have also case studies and different ways in which they use their framework for design thinking. But the three core elements: empathy, expansive thinking, and experimentation. And you can change and work with these in different ways, especially with language learning. Empathy is really important. Expansive thinking, because a lot of times students have a really strict and structured approach, use the textbook, memorize certain things, pass the exam. So incorporating expansive thinking activities definitely helps them to kind of grow and be more critical in their thinking. And experimentation. So experimentation can come in a whole number of ways. It could be students making paper prototypes. It could be them testing with Pepper, doing A/B testing, surveys, anything. But I found experimentation is a better way to check their understanding than just a hard and fast paper test. And that's the reason why I go back to Google's design thinking methods. Has anyone heard of Giga School? If you're familiar, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But Giga School is, well, it's called the Global and Innovation Gateway for All, quite a mouthful. But it's something that the government of Japan has been working on for quite some time. And there was a push towards this post-information society, which they called Society 5.0, that incorporates cyberspace and AI, big data, and the Internet of Things. And this was rolled out a couple of years ago, but they definitely hit the ground running last year and this year with the pandemic. And what it did was it put technology in the classrooms in elementary schools and some junior high schools all throughout Japan. So this is the Giga School. And there are some teachers who have been working full-time at flagship public elementary schools and junior high schools to bring about the Giga School. There have been a lot of challenges in the sense that you just get handed a Chromebook or an iPad and you have to use it and teach students how to use it. That has been something that teachers have been tasked with doing on top of all of the other educational bits. But this initiative is great because we're finding more opportunities to build a better relationship with technology and students in the classroom. So for those of you who might be wondering about creating things, apps or websites or different programs, there are lots of opportunities coming your way for making these things for public and private schools in the future. So the Giga program's goal is to ensure the students in this Society 5.0 era, where ICTs are part of our daily lives and absolutely necessary, will learn the needed skills and abilities to thrive. As I mentioned before, there are quite a number of challenges of the online classroom. So what I wanted to look at were some of the ways technology and gamification, UX, can play a role in helping to merge the virtual and the physical classroom. Now it is no longer an option. We just have to. There is the virtual classroom and the physical classroom. In many instances, they converge. At my school, we're still a bit of both. So some students who may be high risk and they have to be at home, they are participating through the virtual classroom. But students in the physical classroom still need that interaction as well. One of the main challenges was the way in which information is delivered in the classroom. So the physical classroom is multi-channel. There are people talking all of the time. There are different pockets of communication happening. But with the virtual classroom, it became very mono-channel, and you had one person just dishing out information and no interaction. So one of the strategies that we've been using is the reliance on gamification and gamification models in our lesson planning. So gamification is the application of typical elements of game playing. So things like scoring points, competing with other students, leaderboards, rules of play. This is all elements of gameplay. and we apply these game elements to other areas of activity. So typically this is used as an online marketing technique that encourages engagement with a product or service, but it has been incredibly useful in the classroom. And I'll go into some of the ways in which that gets done. So gamification and motivation. So as we know, students are very addicted to their smartphones. I'll give anyone an applaud if you can pry them away from their hands at any given time. But this, occupation of space in the minds of students can be reworked a little bit. So gamification and motivation helps to change their perceptions and attitudes to learning, while we as educators are developing skills through this kind of practical, hands-on approach. And these are some examples of gamification apps that are used in education. These that I'm talking about today, I have used personally in the classroom. If you are familiar with them, you can give me a thumbs up and let me know. If not, I'll just run through a little bit and talk about why they work well in the setting. So the three I'm looking at today are Quizlet, Kahoot, and Duolingo. So let's start with Kahoot. So Kahoot is an online quiz game. And essentially what works with this is you as the teacher can easily distribute the quiz to as many students as you need to via a pin. So the app itself generates a unique pin that is given to each student on their devices. It could be mobile, it could be the iPad, it could be a PC, and they all have access to the same information, which is really helpful when you're dealing with larger size classes, 30, 40 students. And in real time, they can add information to the screens, go through the quiz, look at the leaderboards, and see how other students are doing with the task. Another great thing about Kahoot, as I mentioned earlier with experimentation, not just teacher deliver content, is the students themselves can create quizzes. So one activity I do at the end of the month, I would have the students, each like a group of students, use a unit of the textbook and create a quiz based on that. And then we play together. This is great because once you have the pin, you can play from wherever you are. So students are home, students who are actually in the hospital, students who are in the classroom are all playing the same games at the same time. And you're able to facilitate that interaction and motivate the students to play. But Kahoot frames the quiz in a very structured way. So students' attention is focused on what they're doing at that time. There are not a lot of bells and whistles to distract them. So that's a good thing if you're designing stuff for lower level students. The minimal is best because their attention is 5 seconds and that's it. The next one is Duolingo. I'm sure everyone has used Duolingo at some point in their life. It's quite convenient. And what I like about Duolingo is the way in which you can see other students in this kind of leaderboard social sphere way. So students are always trying to track their progress, and tracking it with other members of their class is very helpful. I love the UI. I think it's quite engaging, really simple, really clean design, and things like bonus points and leveling up have helped my students and motivated them to want to continue learning the language. So Duolingo is up there and one of my favorites. Oh, I see a question. Let's see. Okay, so Thomas mentioned adding on to Kahoot discussion, he met an amazing middle school student who is a programmer and blind in the USA. From gamification point of view, he's very competitive and didn't like that he couldn't compete fairly against other students. Ah, I see. Yes. Okay, this is talking about students with disabilities. Yeah, that's definitely an area that Japan needs to work on in terms of their accessibility of content delivery. I have friends who personally work at schools with a separate classroom for students with disabilities. And sometimes they complain that a lot of the textbook materials aren't translated well, or you can't really apply the same lesson plan for a classroom of students and then a classroom of students with varying disabilities. So yeah, that's definitely something that there is a market for in developing that kind of content. Thank you, Thomas, for your question and your feedback. So let's see. Right, the next one is Quizlet. Quizlet is it's simple. It's a bare bones application. It's essentially a flashcard, build your own flashcard set. It's easy enough that my students can manage with minimal English skills. So I'm talking about junior high school, maybe ninense, sanense. And the parts about Quizlet that work really well are the ways in which they are delivered, the flashcards are delivered. So you could sort the cards, you can use audio, you can test yourself, there are different scatter groups. So there are multiple ways to access the same information. And this could be good in terms of the different types of learners. If you're visual, if you're auditory, using Quizlet can help you access that information in different ways. And similarly to Kahoot, I would first build a quiz, have them play it, see what the gameplay is like, get them excited about using it, and then hand it over to them to create their own set of flashcards. And you can pair it with audio and images. So students love to go on the internet and find all sorts of ridiculous pictures and put it together when making these quizzes. There was like a One Punch Man exclusive quiz set that was made a little while back. So another thing about Quizlet is the language in which they present their progress screens. It has a really familiar, warm and friendly style to it, and you can also tailor the content to your specific needs. And my students have commented that they really like that kind of friendly approach instead of what we are used to, which is really hardcore, testing. You failed, you passed, that's it. But this is like, oh, you're getting better. The questions are getting harder. Now you're getting the hang of this. So in terms of designing the copy, I would say friendly and inviting always helps. And with that, I want to jump into different styles of learning. I've seen a lot of adaptive academic learning websites pushing the idea of adaptive testing. So what adaptive testing is, it delivers a kind of continuous adaptive learning. So you'd have a curriculum, and the curriculum would be tested based on the student's needs. So the application would look at the ways in which you are failing or excelling at certain parts of the syllabus, and then redesign the course to help the students learn. And this is something that I haven't seen a lot of schools using. Usually this is what the teacher has to do, sit down and figure out how to best tailor the course to the different students and their needs. But if there's an adaptive learning environment for Japan specific content, that could be really useful in the future. And with that, we move on to the different types of learners. And types of learners vary. Sometimes I have classrooms where it's not a vast majority, it's a mix of all. But keeping these things in mind, both with the technology that we use in the classroom and in the way that it's delivered, can help to avoid certain mistakes that we might make. So there are like visual learners, tactile learners, auditory learners, and thinking about the learners that we're designing for can help us design better products. So I mentioned that leaderboards were really helpful in increasing motivation with the students. And there are different ways that you could use leaderboards in the classroom. You can use a very streamlined version of a leaderboard where it shows all of the students and all of their progress made throughout the year, or sometimes there's quite a simple leaderboard. I use this website called Keep the Score, which is very bare bones. You just put in the columns and rows and the different student names, and you can create your own little leaderboard as you need to. I have seen some teachers do amazing things with Google spreadsheets. I myself am not a spreadsheet expert, but definitely leaderboards have been helping with keeping that motivation and merging the virtual and physical classrooms and encouraging that competitive learning environment while also motivating personal goal tracking. So technology that encourages personal goal tracking, I think, is quite helpful for younger learners because they want to see how their progress has grown in the same way that they would want to see how their power bar has grown when they're playing all of these games. They can find the same motivation in their learning applications. Now, chance and luck. So I've had students in the past be a little bit discouraged because they know sometimes they get chosen because they are weaker or stronger than other students. And using elements of chance and luck can help with that, motivate competition in the classroom, but also help bridge that divide, and puts everyone on a kind of equal playing field because no one knows who's going to get chosen next. Random number generators are great. There are some very poorly designed random number generators, and it would be nice to have, cleaner, sleeker looking generators out there. Digital dice and dice rolling, also quite helpful and works really well. And these types of very simple applications help deliver a kind of autonomy that the students really sink their teeth into. They love the idea that they are now in charge of rolling the dice, selecting the number, that it's no longer the teacher choosing the students, but something very up in the air. And they get a real thrill out of it. And then in the same vein of all gamification methods, but skills transfer and simulation, maybe you would have seen there was a lot of talk about this particular game at the beginning of the pandemic. And there are a lot of case studies that have been written about the ways in which it can help with people who are learning a second language in terms of social interaction and reading and speaking and communication. But simulations like this are great because of the transfer of skills in real life. So some of my students would play together with members of their class, and that has helped because when we finally brought them back into the classroom, they had something to connect them with students who had never actually met each other physically because of the way in which they came into the school during the pandemic. There was no face-to-face classes, it was all online. So using this was a great way, using Animal Crossing was a great way to help kind of merge virtual world with reality. And then there's data that shows that simulations help with problem solving skills and giving us the real life tools that can help to inform our decision making processes as language learners or just as learners in general. I'm gonna take a minute just to look at the chat real quick. Everything's good. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to type it in.
Yeah, give some break to Rishma. Rishma, maybe you need to drink some water. You have been talking for quite a lot of time. Yeah, maybe give people like 2 minutes to come up with a question. Sometimes it takes time to type something in the chat. So guys,
Sure.
I strongly encourage you, if you have something, if you have a very long question, you can actually raise your hand and we can unmute you so you can ask it to Rishma like without typing if you don't want to. So it's completely up to you. I usually encourage people to interact as much as possible. Even this question is not related to the presentation right now. If it's anything related to digitalization, tech, education in tech, the ways how children learn, that's feel free to do. From my side, I would like to, maybe just spice up things a bit, asking about, there's a question very close to what Andre asked about the bad sides, right, of technology, about the bad vision, right, the posture and addiction. I think that, and I have a question about that. How do you distinguish when there is a there is a border, right? There is a line between students using technology and internet for searching for something for the education, for the needs of the classroom, and when they start just browsing in the social media or something like that. Can you control it in a classroom, or do you have an access to their devices, or they can use only specific apps on the device in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you are absolutely correct. So with all of the devices that have been delivered or purchased for our school, we have blocked certain websites. So they don't have access to Twitter, to YouTube. There are some workarounds, but it is quite tricky to get through it. With those things, I found that it gets better the older the students are. So by the time they hit high school, we give them devices that have access to just about everything. But they are mature enough to know, this is classroom time. But with the younger students, so junior high school, Ichi-ni-san, Nensei, it's very difficult to hone them in, and that we have to be a lot stricter with what they have access to. I find as a teacher that can be difficult, because me personally, I would want to say, like, I want to teach my students self-control, because it comes out in negative ways later on, where they do say, oh, I got 2 hours of sleep because I was playing this game, or I was scrolling on Twitter and didn't finish my homework, So having to teach tech in moderation while asking them, please use technology and use more of it, is a hard line.
Did you mention also that YouTube is one of the prohibited websites?
Yeah, for the younger students, it is. I know. Yeah.
So from what age is it allowed to watch YouTube?
By the time they hit Sanense, so maybe 14, 15, yeah, they can. And even then, some teachers disagree and say that's too young. We should wait until high school for them to be able to have access to YouTube during classroom time. But YouTube's great. There are a lot of great things on YouTube.
So many tutorials, definitely.
Lots of tutorials and just videos, and they do a lot of research, especially as I was talking about the different types of learners. I have a lot of students who don't enjoy reading. They can't, read through a case study or spend hours picking through information. They'd much rather just hear it or watch a video about it. So I think schools should cater more to the different types of learners and encourage all styles of learning. Even though that's easier said than done.
Right. Okay. If we have no questions, looks like everything is clear. Maybe you can proceed, Rishma. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that break. So,
no, and looks like people were typing as I mentioned. Just right on that, you have 2 questions in the chat here.
Sure. Okay, I'm just going to read this one out from Byron. Following on from negative aspects questions, are there day-to-day strategies embedded in technology platforms to balance time on technology and time interacting physically or socially? Further to that, have you seen technology used to enhance or improve engagement with physical education and social skills? To improve. Great question, Byron. Used to enhance or improve engagement with physical education and social skills. I'll jump back to the first bit about technology to balance time and time interacting with it. Some of the applications that we use or some of the devices do have cutoff points. So they would actually turn off if it's past, usually it's past the hour or the 50 minutes that the class is designed to be run in. We can set timers and things like that. I'm not sure what applications they use for it, but our tech team has set that up, or else the kids would be on it all day long. To improve engagement with physical education. Nothing that we do at our school specifically, but I do know I have quite a lot of students who play Ring Fit, and they tell me like that's how they get their exercise in during the pandemic. They like played the Ring Fit indoors. And that was their way of, engaging physically with technology. But other than that, no, that would be a really good thing. Thank you, Byron. And the last one from Stephanie, there is YouTube Kids, and that can be useful. I use it for my kids. Yes, YouTube Kids is great. YouTube Kids works really well with Ichinensei, but from the time you get to Ninensei, they kind of need access to a little bit more content. But yeah, YouTube Kids has been really helpful. Okay. So I'll go on to the, where am I? Yes. So Scratch. This is a creative testing environment which supports learners in coding across a range of subjects. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Scratch. Like, I'm talking to an audience of people who I'm sure have used this before. At our school, we use it in really simple, this simple sense of the word, with pepper, and teaching basic coding and testing, nothing too rigorous. And sometimes there's a special teacher who would come in to teach these things. And it won't be something that's done by language teachers. It would be done in the IT classes. But knowing that this is out there and is available is really helpful for anyone who wants to continue to build content using platforms like these. And as we mentioned before, with the simulation, it helps with applying real world skills that they would need later on, not just something that is a classroom or textbook only activity. But I'm seeing the trend of creating and designing lessons that will help them in the outside world, in the real world. For students who do have access to YouTube, one activity that I've done is having them create a YouTube channel and learning about audiences and what content they want to present to certain audiences. Sometimes it can be done with an actual YouTube channel, having students create a YouTube channel. Other times it's a mock scenario. So they prepare a presentation, they think of a channel name, the theme, the target audience, and they pitch it like you're pitching it to a client. This is my 2 to 4 minute presentation on why I think this YouTube channel will be the next highly subscribed, highly rated YouTube channel on YouTube. So these are ways that you could kind of incorporate the digital and the physical classroom and have a space for students to engage without having to worry about them getting a little bit too distracted with these things. And on to collaborative learning environments, I use Jamboard. So Jamboard is one of the it's part of the Google Suite. It's free, which is great. So everyone should have access to Jamboard. And it is, it's great for interaction, collaboration, and brainstorming. So oftentimes we would do brainstorming verbally as a class, raising your hand, can you participate? But sometimes that can be difficult for learners who don't want to speak up or are a little bit shy. So I found using Jamboard, both virtually and in the classroom, can be really helpful because you have a visual description of what is going on in the minds of students, and they could present their opinions and pin things to the board in different ways. Also, when you've collected information on Jamboard, so let's say we're brainstorming and students are putting up a ton of digital Post-it notes, sharing their ideas, you can collect all of this information and have students sort the information or analyze the data or present information in new and innovative ways. So Jamboard has been a very helpful tool throughout the pandemic. How easy is it for everyone to jump on this Jamboard? Do you think that is possible?
Yeah, let's try. Let's try.
Okay, so I'm gonna put the link to the Jamboard in the chat. Okay. Okay. So if you click on the link, it should open you up to the Jamboard screen. Oh, yes, I'm seeing people. Let me share the screen Okay, so everyone should be seeing the Jamboard screen. Yes, I will use the pointer. This is the pointer, very helpful. So I'll run you through the basics of Jamboard for anyone who is meeting this for the first time. What I like about it is that all the participants to the top, they're all anonymous. So students can present their answers to their questions anonymously. And on the left of the screen, there are the different tools for writing. You could erase, you could pin a sticky note, and the sticky notes are useful. I would ask students, so the question I have today is how many different ways can you use a newspaper? So maybe for cleaning things, right? Oh, someone said making a hat. Yes, exactly. And then once everyone is in the Jamboard session, you can move Post-it notes around, you can group Post-it notes, add, change the size of things. It's quite fun. And there are pages at the top, so you can choose from one page with the whole class joining in, or you can give students individual pages and have them all write their own presentation on a different page. You can set the background. There are different backgrounds. I see people playing around with it. You can also add images and GIFs to the Jamboard, which is great for sharing. People are having fun with the Jamboard. That's nice. Let me see what we have here. So how many different ways can you use a newspaper? A desk cover for messy crafts. Yes. Making a paper boat. Classic. As a fan to keep cool. Certainly. For learning about different cultures around the world. Yes. Yes. Someone's put in a picture. Perfect. For cleaning things. Yes. Nice. So this is Jamboard. This is just one way you can use it. I'm sure you can think of many other ways that this can be useful in a classroom, in a virtual space, for designing, brainstorming, doing, UX spreadsheets, working on copy, writing essays, countless uses for it, and it's been helpful. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to the presentation screen. Feel free to keep adding to the Jamboard as the time goes by. There we go. Okay, is everyone back onto yes, we all good? Let me know if I've made a mess. Okay, cool. So yes, so collecting and analyzing data. And we just did this question, how many different ways can you use a newspaper? I like to start a class with that. So I would do a warm-up, present them with a question, get them onto the Jamboard, and have them posting things and coming up with different ideas. The layout has been helpful for students who are encountering these kinds of environments for the first time. Google always does a great job with the way in which these things are laid out. And our school in particular has been using Google Classroom, as well as Google Meet and Jamboard all together. So this full suite is what the students are accustomed to, but there are other applications that I'm sure are just as useful. And yeah, so with my background in UX, I have found ways to use UX design as a teaching tool. It works with example-based learning, with teaching UX principles of design, having a solutions-based approach to activities, and facilitating collaboration and discussion. One of my favorite activities, and one that the students do really well, they excel at this paper prototype, a very basic UX prototype that they have to make. So students are usually given prompts. I'll tell them, something about travel or finance or language, and ask them to create their own apps. Depending on the level, students can build anywhere between 3 to 8 app screens. So I have them draw it out, and they write their annotations. And having them write annotations for the screens is what helps to bridge that language learning and the UX application with the prototype together. And it helps them to think through how we use things and how we describe things and how you can explain things to other students. And that builds empathy as well, having to explain to other students how their app works and why they think this button should go here and what are they able to see on this screen. And sometimes I use Marvel app, where we take pictures of the screens and you put it into the app and they can actually play around with it in real time. If anyone has any other ideas of how you could use prototypes in the classroom, please feel free to put it in the chat. There's so much to work with for that. But this has been a fun activity for students. Another one is interactive storytelling. So there are tools that do random picture sorting. It's like a digital dice for storytelling. And you roll the dice and 3 images pop up and they have to write a story about it. It would be great if something like this could be tailored to the textbook or tailored to something that's very Japan specific, because sometimes my students don't recognize the pictures or the icons that they see. Then we use the spinning wheel of icons or images, where it would be icons that are primarily used in like maybe iPhone apps, and then they all recognize it immediately and work their way to tell stories in that way. Or you could do a heads or tails for a choose your own adventure game, but having interactive storytelling helps students to kind of position themselves in a way where they don't have to think about everything all at once creatively. They can work together, use the pictures, and write it out. Another interactive storytelling tool is this one called Storybird. I think there's a paid feature, but the free version has similar functionality where you get different pictures or you can input your own pictures and tell a story that way. When students are doing presentations, it's helpful for them. Sometimes they sketch or they draw, they go out and take pictures and use Storybird to compile those and put it together and present it in a very clean and sleek way. Again, simple actions that they're learning to collect and prepare and present, which is helpful when they get to the higher levels where they have to make full-blown presentations to large groups of people. Looking at the trends, so these are some education app design trends for 2021. I'm sure we can discuss how on the money some of the things are, and the ones that we think aren't so great as trends as we're almost to the end of 2021. But this is from a education app design blog, and they wrote about, virtual and 3D reality. Not sure 3D reality is there just yet in Japanese education system. Mobile first learning, definitely. A lot of my students, when they are not in the classroom, they are home on their mobile devices. So mobile first learning surely skyrocketed between 2020 and 2021. Gamification, as we just spoke about, definitely has a place in the classroom for young adults, children. Micro teaching, so using small text and infographics and short video, and in that vein, video content. So video content has been really pertinent in the delivering of classroom materials. I think a lot of teachers as well are exhausted in the presentation of things that they have to do. So using video content and finding interesting ways to include videos in very text heavy or syllabus heavy materials is something that we're looking at for the future. Oh, I see a question come in. Does your school have VR headsets? No, my school, we don't have VR headsets. I need to petition tomorrow to have VR headsets delivered right away. I wish we did. I'm not sure how helpful that would be for the students or even for the teachers. But that's interesting. I see another question. In your lessons, how many minutes of the class is each student actually speaking in English? That's a good question. It differs depending on the age group, and it differs depending on the classroom activity. but we like to have it at least, so let's say the class is 50 minutes long. I would say about 25 of those minutes would be student talking time. And it can come in the form of pair work, so peer-to-peer communication, Q&As, just students reading or speaking. We try for it to be more communicative rather than just read and repeat kind of thing. But it varies per class. Oh, thank you, Thomas. So someone sent a VR creation app link in the chat. Okay. Someone else suggested, Joanna suggested, wireframe a simulation game as an activity. Oh, that would be quite fun. Wireframe a simulation game as an activity. Okay. And how many minutes are the students listening to English or writing in English? 50 minutes. The whole class. We don't use a lot of Japanese in the classroom. And if we have to, it's in the form of instructions. So the majority of the class would be students listening to English or writing in English or speaking in English. So yeah, do you think there are any other app trends that you see in the future? If anyone wants to make any predictions. Okay, I'll move on. I'll wait. If anyone has anything they think of, you can pop it in the chat and I'll get to it. But yes, so as I mentioned before, our school uses Google Classroom, and there are a couple of case studies that I've linked to it here, and I'll make this presentation available after for anyone who's interested in going back and doing some of the research. But the Google Classroom design is quite nice because it matches a lot of what we do in the physical classroom and has been helpful for students who, again, did not have access to personal computers at home or may have only been used to their mobile devices. So the things I like about Google Classroom are the ways in which you can interact with it for the purpose of note-taking and memos and writing, sorting assignments has been great. And these are just some of my casual observations of the UI. Some downsides have been, the very heavy progress trackers, headers, and lists that a lot of these education sites use, like Skillshare or what is this one? Coursera. So sometimes you get too much content up at the top, and they talk about having very aggressive alert messages in very urgent visual language that kind of distracts the user away from their learning goals. And there are other things like pros and cons when it comes to designing these kinds of education platforms. And so how can design support students' working memory by reducing cognitive load? This is something we think about quite a lot with just building our everyday decks and presentation and materials for students, because we're trying to get them to recall and remember a lot of things. Having this become long-term memory is difficult. So these are just some quick bullet notes that have worked when I worked in design and work well as a teacher. So using bullets over paragraphs, definitely helpful. Using colors to inform learning patterns. Providing multimodal resources such as videos alongside reading. So videos are things that we try to incorporate as much as we can so that students have different ways of accessing the information. Using signals in your design. So arrows, lines, circles, anything for visual reinforcement rather than just, a page full of text or having instructions that are quite long-winded. And finally, incorporating the principles of design into everyday slide design, lesson plan design, material design, things like contrast, alignment, repetition, proximity are all helpful. If I'm teaching and I have to use my Zoom background, these are the things that I would think about if I have to share a lot of information with students who may have very short attention spans. And yeah, so how can technology support teachers and students? Just to summarize everything we spoke about today. So I think, increase student engagement with gamification, using multimodal activities, using the things that are available to us in new and innovative ways. The UX and UI considerations for improved learning materials. And finally, how can we, encourage critical thinking and collaboration with our students, even though things have shifted a lot in the way that we approach education over the last couple of years. I think it's still important to always encourage critical thinking and collaboration, despite how much technology we use in the classroom. At the end of the day, that's still a core part of teaching and learning. And yeah, I just want to think about what will classrooms of the future look like? That's something that we think about quite a lot. What will it look like in the next 5 years, 10 years, 50 years? Will I no longer exist? Am I an AI or a robot that will be delivering all of my lessons to the students? What will be obsolete? What will stand the test of times? These are the questions. So all in all, that's it for me. So thank you. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Rishma. Thank you so much for amazing presentation. So many tools I've seen today, never seen so many in my life. We still have 5 minutes left. And yeah, so time for questions. Feel free to shoot as many questions as you want in the chat or just unmute yourself. You have someone praising your job, Rishma. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, no problem. You're welcome.
Yeah, actually, your school seems very advanced. I did a volunteering 5 years ago, like for a couple of months at the private Japanese school, and we had only paper textbooks, and the most creative teacher had piano to compose the songs and kind of entertain students with singing and playing. That was the most techie, I don't know, advanced thing that I ever seen in the Japanese private school, public school. Yeah.
Yeah, it varies quite a bit. I mean, I do talk to a lot of teachers all across Japan, and they have, some of them, that's all they have access to is printing out things from the computer. I had someone tell me that they were using their phone and the app on their phone, and they would make photocopies of the app screens and print it for the students. Like, okay, well, if that's how you have to do, if a fax machine is the most tech you have in your classroom, then, a teacher could find a way to use it.
There was some comment from Len. So she said that she's surprised at mobile first, and most of her kids are on iPad. What about your school? What kind of device do you guys use?
We use iPads, but the issue with the iPads is that they're not allowed to take it home. So it's only accessible at school. So when the students are at home, everything they do is on their mobile devices. So when they have to, write their notes or do assignments, it's all on their mobile phones.
Thank you. And so Joanna says that they're using Microsoft Teams for sharing photos of their posters made in English class. You mentioned that you're using probably like the most products that you use are Google products, right?
Yeah, we're using Google products. Sometimes that happens with the way that the boards of education buy their subscriptions to things. So we just ended up buying the entire Google suite and using it. But Microsoft Teams is also great for sharing photos and doing that thing. So it's nice to see that there are other schools doing that as well. Thanks for sharing, Joanna.
So right now, are you delivering lessons online, or you actually attending the school, like you're going to the school in person?
It's a bit of both. So for students who maybe, they have a fever and they have to go home, we're still delivering. So there's like an iPad in the classroom that is live streaming the content. So we try to have a mix of in classroom and virtual going on at the same time so that all the students can participate. It doesn't work for all the classes and it doesn't work all the time, but it's something that we're slowly adapting to.
You have a question from Natasha. How much time do you get to prepare for classes?
Ooh, good question. Not enough would be would be my answer. I guess so. I mean, maybe you would get a period or two throughout the day to kind of put your lesson plans together and sort it out. But yeah, you can always have more time to prepare. But that's why I think using a lot of these tools are helpful, because they're really easy to switch out and swap and change with grades. So actually being more tech focused in the classroom has saved teachers a lot of time. So yeah.
I assume you guys at your school, you probably have coding classes as well.
We do, but thankfully that's done by a specific teacher. That's his main role. I think that would be too crazy if I had to like jump in there and be like, well, kids, Python for children. Yeah, we do a little bit of coding, but generally it's mostly just you learning to use the devices in the specific classes.
Cool. So it's 8 p.m. If you guys have any last questions, feel free to share them now. Otherwise, we will let Rishma take a rest and enjoy her evening, since she had classes today. She spent several hours entertaining children, and now she's entertaining adults. So
all in a day's work. I hope everyone really did find it useful. And like I said, Sasha, if you want the presentation, I'll be happy to share it with you. And people can like click on the links and see some of the places where I source the data from and check out the case studies, because it's really interesting. And this stuff, EdTech is constantly adapting. They're like, just in this small space of time between 2020 to 2021, so much has changed. So much of what we do as teachers have changed. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, programmers and developers really jumping at the opportunity in Japan, especially to create content and platforms that students and teachers can use. Please, as a teacher, I would appreciate.
I have your presentation. I have actually a link to your presentation, Google Drive. Do you want me to share it now, or do you want me to share it later?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm sharing a link to Rishma's presentation right now. I think that you probably need to send request for Rishma to open access. So guys, if you want to access Rishma's presentation, click the link right now and send request for her to show that slides to you, and getting access to those millions of useful tools that she shared today. Actually, there were quite a lot of tools you shared today. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Andre.
Cool. Great. Then yes, definitely would like to say thanks, first of all, to our amazing speaker. Thank you so much for your time, amazing presentation, sharing so many cool ideas. Thank you to everyone for attending the event and asking so many cool questions. I really appreciate your interaction, guys. Have a great evening for those of you based in Japan, and looking forward to seeing you at Le Wagon events. Have a rest, Rishma. Please get ready for tomorrow's day. Working with kids.
Yes, and if anyone wants to find me, I'm on Medium and LinkedIn. Add me, follow me, message me. It's all good.
Cool. Thank you so much. And yes, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.